In this section, we'll talk about yarn-dyed patterns. This will comprise the majority of stripes, plaids, and checks. Although stripes, plaids, and checks can be printed onto a fabric, the vast majority of them come from a yarn-dyed process. This is when yarn has been pre-dyed before the weaving or knitting process. During the weaving or knitting process, the different colored yarns are arranged by their color to create different stripe, plaid, and check patterns. As I mentioned, most stripes and plaids are created using this yarn-dyed method. Once the yarns have been dyed, the colored yarns are alternated in the weaving or knitting process, creating stripes if done in one direction, and plaids if done in both directions. Most woven stripes will run lengthwise along the warp grain. Most knit stripes will run crosswise in the weft direction. The thickness of each stripe color depends on how many yarns of that color are placed next to each other. Many times when we're working with mills to determine striped patterns, we will specify the specific amount of yarns needed to create a stripe of a certain width. The yarn-dyed process can be seen very well in plaids. So if we look at the check at the top right, we can see squares of white and squares of red, and then squares of pink. The squares of pink are where the red in one direction is being diluted by the white in another direction. If we look here, there are red yarns in the weft grain. They will run across like this. They appear pink when they are intermixed with the white in the warp direction. They only achieve a solid red color when both the warp and weft yarns intersect, creating a red square. Now let's talk about some of the different types of stripes that we can find. Now first we'll talk about is a pinstripe. Pinstripes are very thin stripes, sometimes just a few threads wide. Pinstripes are most commonly seen in suiting fabrics and give the name to this iconic pinstripe suit. The awning stripe. Awning stripes are very wide stripes and usually incorporate a white stripe alternating with other colors. This stripe gets its name because it resembles the stripe patterning often seen on awnings. Barcode stripes. Barcode stripes mix different colors, but more importantly, many different widths of stripe. Barcode stripes get their name because they resemble barcodes. The Breton stripe. The Breton stripe is a horizontal navy blue or black stripe with a white stripe in between. They alternate at usually regular patterns, but can gradually increase in thickness or decrease in thickness. The Breton stripe is usually made on a knit garment and so usually runs in a crosswise direction. Traditionally, the Breton stripe is always a navy or black stripe, alternating with a white one. However, sometimes other colors can be used. A candy stripe. Candy stripes can come in two different varieties. The first being a colorful array of stripes often used in children's wear. The second will mimic the stripes on a candy cane. We can see the two different versions here on the right. The banker stripe. This stripe is most often seen in cotton shirting fabrics, especially to make collared button-down shirts. The banker stripe is a traditionally thin, about 1/8 inch wide stripe of alternating blue and white. As the name suggests, this stripe was popular amongst bankers. Checks. Checks refer to a plaid pattern that only has two colors, and the vertical and horizontal stripes are all the same size. So we can see here a check that alternates a tan and black. Both the tan and black stripes are of equal width and repeat evenly, both in the warp direction and in the weft direction. The buffalo check. A buffalo check refers to a specific check pattern with wide stripes. It is usually a red and black checked pattern, but can sometimes be used with different colors. We most often see the buffalo check on flannel shirts, but can be used in many other garments. Gingham check. Gingham is a check style that alternates a colored stripe with a white stripe. Like all checks, the stripes have equal widths in both the warp and weft direction. The gingham red and white check seen at the bottom right is a traditional fabric often seen for tablecloths, especially at Italian restaurants. However, gingham can be used to make all different types of garments. Tartans. Tartans are a traditional kind of plaid whose color patterns represent Scottish family clans. The family tartans are still used today to make traditional garments like kilts, seen on the left. Tartans have also been adopted by the fashion industry and are used as plaid designs for non-traditional clothing. Tartans are always symmetrical in design. This means that you can fold or repeat in half, and the right half will be the same as the left half. Similarly, the top half will be the same as the bottom half. The upper image shows different types of tartans and the clans that they are associated with. There are many more than this. And today, many institutions create their own tartan. The Burberry plaid. The Burberry plaid is a trademarked plaid created by the brand Burberry. It is actually a type of tartan because it is symmetrical, as it is a symmetrical plaid. And it has been especially created to be linked to this iconic brand, just as tartans are created to be linked to specific family clans. Only garments made by Burberry are legally allowed to use this check, and it is used much like a logo to distinguish its clothing from others. Madras. Madras is a traditional Indian fabric made with colorful plaid patterns. Originally, the yarns used for this fabric were dyed with natural vegetable dyes. Today, synthetic dyes are used, but they still tend to try and mimic the colors of the natural dyes. Madras is woven from yarns that are still wet from the dyeing process. This causes the colors to bleed into one another, giving it a muted look. Window pane check. Window pane checks are thin striped checks arranged to form squares in the fabric. They are evenly spaced, both in warp and weft direction. Window pane checks can come in many different colors. Next, we'll talk about printing designs.